Good morning, everybody. We're just going to give it a minute here to let attendees trickle in before we get things started. Alrighty, seeing that attendee number starting to grow. So, welcome to another Monolith Mondays. My name is Megan. I'm the marketing manager here at Monolith Forensics. And if you haven't come to Monolith Mondays before, basically what this is every Monday at 10 a.m. Central, someone from our Monolith team is going to walk you through a feature inside of Monolith live. And if you have any questions about the feature or anything else in Monolith, our team is here to help answer those questions live for you. So today we have Maher, one of our software engineers, who's going to be walking us through custom fields. I'm going to go ahead and bring him up on screen. And while I'm bringing him up, we will have time for Q&A. So if you have questions during the session, just go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll come back and answer those once Maher is done walking us through that feature. Alrighty, here we go. Maher, promote. Alrighty. Good morning, Maher.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining today. My name's Maher. I am about 3 months and some into my time at Monolith, and today I wanted to just informally chat about a feature that many of you hopefully use, and if not, maybe we can find some uses for it for you and explore it together. That feature is custom fields. And really, I want to focus on the parts of this feature that some folks may not have fully explored yet, or maybe you already know about it and it just reinforces the way that you like to use it. For me, I find it to be quite useful and also something that could potentially save a lot of time. Please stop me with questions at any time. If you don't raise your hand to ask questions, we most certainly will allow time at the end to ask all the questions you'd like. So let me first get this shared. One moment, please. All righty. And there we have. Right now, I'm just looking at a raw, pretty early case that isn't completely filled out, or if it is, we have just a few details in there, which is perfect for us today. So, what are custom fields? The simplest way that I can think about it, Monolith comes with a bunch of standard fields out of the box. For example, when you create a case, you will have the case number, the case name, uh, you'll have the examiner, the dates, and so on. And on evidence, whenever you create a piece of evidence, you have, of course, the case it's attached to, the make, the model, the serial number. There are a lot of these fields here that work for most people most of the time. But more often than not, you in your agency, in your lab, uh, each firm even can track something that doesn't fit into any of these default boxes. Maybe it's an internal tracking number from a case management system you used before Monolith. Maybe it's a compliance checkbox that your supervisor needs. That's all a custom field is. It's a field you define yourself that lives alongside the built-in ones and behaves the same way. It can be filled out in forms, it can be visible in grids, it's filterable, and it's searchable. So there are 6 places where you can use them. And before I go over those, let me actually go to the where do custom fields live? Uh, if you're not already familiar, they live in settings, and you can find them right here under item labels and above task templates. So when you navigate to this page, um, you'll see our description here, covering what I just covered in a nutshell. There's also a help article that please you're more than welcome to read over. Um, but the 6 uses are in case fields, evidence fields, inquiry fields, acquisition fields, storage fields, as well as custom people fields. So I'm going to go through these one by one, as they're organized in a way that's kind of top down a little bit. But for cases, the kinds of custom fields, you might have things like, and these are just some examples here. And by the way, these custom fields are not necessarily tied to one particular case. So that way we can reuse them between cases or throughout different cases or evidence items, for example. But here in the case custom fields, you'll put things like the warrant number, the jurisdiction, the prosecutor name, for example, billing codes. Some of those are very custom and specific to different agencies. Um, Whereas evidence fields, some examples might be the device condition, the IMEI, is the SIM present in this smartphone device or cellular device, the cloud provider. You can see we have a lot of just sort of a smattering of different test fields or fields we create just to test out our custom fields here, but certainly don't take these as all the practical namings or uses of them. These are just some test ones we have. Then in acquisitions, you might even put things like, and I'll go ahead and just quickly create one here, like the tool version used for the acquisition. And with many of these custom field creation pop-ups you see here, you're always going to see a is required. Now, as I'm sure that different agencies have people filling out these forms, and this is was a very highly requested customizability field for a custom field, is to make it required. That way, when people are filling out fields, you can definitely specify, that this cannot be submitted until you mark it required, and until you fill out this information, which hopefully reduces the time that it takes reviewing whatever data or whatever sort of applications are submitted or requests are submitted. That way, you don't have people skipping over fields that are truly essential or need to be reported on or tracked in some way. And my favorite thing about custom fields is just how customizable they are. I mean, we could have a free-form text box here where I can write anything I want. We can have a date, and that's certainly useful for a lot of the date or deadline driven kinds of fields, or just sort of time tracking. A drop down menu, and this is neat because you can just create different different fields that a user can select from, hopefully saving them a little bit of time. And you can also give that option its own description. And then by the way, going back to the tag box, the description is not the value of the field. This is just the description of the field and what kind of information you want entered in the text box. So yes, I can write anything, but as a person who's filling out that field here, it would be the description of what the text box information should contain. So the drop down menu, yeah, so we have a description of that as well. And then finally, a tag box, which is sort of similar to a drop down menu. The difference being that in a drop down menu, I'm going to have singular options that I can select as the person filling out this field. So I would select either of apples or oranges. I happen to like both. And tag box would be you can select multiple. So it could be apples, oranges, bananas, and I can select a subset of them. Um, and yeah, so that where was I here? Acquisition fields is again, going back to like the potential uses of it, we have the tool version used that you can make a custom field for the acquisition method, the verification status of it. Again, different there are different uses for different users, and this hopefully allows for all sorts of fields to be created depending on your specific use case. Um, Moving on to storage fields. So storage fields are, this is also very, very lab agency specific, but creating these custom fields is the same as creating any other custom field, except here you might use a bin, a specific bin location in the lab. You might put the retention deadline here. So, or I think something like special handling notes is a very good idea in case somebody just needs to add specific details on handling that particular piece of evidence versus others. Fragility, or if it's sensitive in some way or somewhat broken, for example. Um, and again, the same types of editors can be selected here. Uh, all in all, the same. It's the same to create a custom field across all of these different types of custom fields. The last one here is people. Um, these will appear for clients and contacts. So you could put as custom fields here. You see here we have a pretty good example of a driver's license or ID number. That can be really helpful. Um, the preferred contact method is one. The agency role, billing notes, these are all just ideas for what kinds of custom fields you might want here. Um, so each of these can have its own set of custom fields. So you have all these different categories. Uh, you might have 10 case level custom fields and zero evidence level ones. Again, it's whatever works for you and your agency. But because they're categorized in this way, they won't get mixed up. So hopefully it's easier to know which custom fields are tied to which category. So let's actually just make one here. So first, you'll need to have an admin role. In case you haven't seen this in the settings page, that may be why. Specifically, the customizations manage permission is one that you'll need to have. Um, I'm not covering the permissions or the roles here, but it's going to be in settings if you're an admin. Regular users filling in cases aren't going to see this. But they will see the fields that you've created. So I'm going to add a field called, let's see, chain of custody verified. So we'll put this in, I think, evidence. And we're going to make this required. Now, I'm going to just leave it as a text box. And that way, if there are any, we could make it a drop down, but maybe there are specific caveats. This is just unique to me. I would think that most agencies would want a simple yes or no. But here, I want a text box so someone can say yes, no, and then if it's if it's no, then maybe they can put some notes or some additional details. And this is neat in that we can make this field apply only to certain devices. I don't want to take advantage of this. I want it to just apply to all devices. So, well, I suppose I could just do a select all here. But you may have certain devices that don't, that virtual machine does not need it. We're just picking one at random. Um, Whether or not COC has been verified. If not, please specify or please add details. And I'm going to hit create. Now then, we are going to look at creating an evidence item and how that will show up. So we have a whole bunch of evidence items here. These are just probably test ones that are covered across all cases. I'm going to attach this one to some case here. We're going to auto generate the evidence number. The evidence type is going to be a smartphone. We'll call it an Apple iPhone 16 Pro. Let's just make it that. Model number I don't have now, but the beauty of it is I can always edit and add it later. Same with this. None of these are required fields. We'll say it's 128 gigabytes. No linked contacts now. We'll give it a high priority. Um, and custom fields. So here we are. Oh yeah, there's a nice use here. Judge on the search authority. We already have a couple pre-selected here. We can select one or multiple. That was a previously created custom field here, and you'll notice that's required. And I'm going to go ahead and try to create this evidence without filling in this field. And you do see, yes, it will gate you and stop you from submitting the form because this has not been filled out. I'm going to say that it is verified. And now that there's contents in this field, it should no longer stop me. And voila, we have a new evidence item with that custom field. Um, and that's how you create or that's how you create an evidence item and ensure that the custom field is there in the form. But let's say you missed a few things. You can say, oops, no, the chain of custody was not verified. And maybe perhaps I need to edit. Now, again, we're going to put no and um, verification status unknown. Maybe it's just unknown. And so you default to no rather than saying yes. And there we have it. So now we have those details. And these fields can be, again, this would be for maybe a separate topic of discussion, but these fields can be included in reports as well. Um, that way, we can track sort of the different items and the custom fields associated with them, all in one nice report. So, going back to maybe some other things that we haven't noticed here about this is going back to the evidence custom fields here. You may not have seen these little drag handles. You can actually reorder the custom items. That way you can determine what order they display in. So some you might want to be more prominent. Um, there's a little enable toggle here that effectively just determines whether or not it's going to show. That way, let's say, you have one field that's just outdated or you have a new version of it. Well, you can disable it and enable the newer one. So I want my chain of custody verified to be the most prominent. I'll drag it to the top and make sure it's enabled. By default, when you create a field, it's going to show as enabled. So be mindful of that in case you don't want that to be displayed on the respective category creation field. So, how does this look? Um, how does this look to the regular user? Um, I think that normally the regular user without admin permissions is just going to see wherever you have these custom fields, they're just going to see them show up exactly as you specified to the specific type. So if we had selected, if we had said that smartphone is not covered, then as a regular user, they'd be none the wiser about specific the specific custom field for that applies to other evidence types. They when they create that piece of evidence, they wouldn't have seen at all that chain of custody verified was even a field for it, for example. So that's custom fields in a nutshell. The ways that this is going to hopefully save you time is that you no longer need to have spreadsheets on the side. So before custom fields, some agencies track their unique data in like maybe a side-by-side Excel file. And let's be real, that's difficult to keep in sync with Monolith. So this hopefully bridges that so that we have things in one single source of truth. Um, Also, the required, like being able to set fields as required, will prevent rework. So, you basically have a supervisor approval, for example. You could make required on a case, and you'll never again have to hand off an unapproved case to court prep because the form just won't save, as you've seen. Um, and another way that I haven't covered yet, because I want to leave some time for Q&A, but filtering, you can just filter on certain fields instead of having meetings. So over what's been done or what the status of that custom field is. So instead of an end of week status meeting where everyone reads off their cases, and you can just set up a filter view and say all cases where status equals in review and assigned examiner equals me. And that way you have one click, the data is current every time, assuming those fields are filled out with up-to-date information and even edited to be updated with up-to-date information. So the general principle is if you find yourself or your team typing the same thing into the notes field of every case or evidence record, um, that's when you might consider creating a custom field instead. So I want to go ahead and, with 5 minutes left, I want to go ahead and open it up to Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and ask.
I've got a question for you while we're waiting for the audience to maybe put their questions in. Um, how do custom fields work like in the context of Relay? Like if we set up a custom field, can we set up some things in Relay so when somebody's filling out that form, they have to also fill out that custom field information?
Absolutely. And in fact, that was one of the most requested. Uh, that was one of the biggest motivators for custom fields was especially when you have, for example, a law enforcement agent that they're not very tech savvy at all, and they're using Relay to submit a request, and sometimes they're doing it. Let's be honest. Maybe most of the time they're doing it from a mobile device, and they don't know. They're trying to fill out as little as possible to get the request done. Maybe they have many requests to different labs even, and this way you can ensure uniformity and normalization of the requests that you receive to your lab or your agency, and by creating a custom field that you can mark required, and they must fill that out in order to submit the form. And that way you have a uniformity of data and you ensure that certain information is submitted. And in the description fields, one of the things there is you can specify, for your agency what the format should be to hopefully get them to submit things with the correct case tracking format or even like the correct protocols for you. And that ensures that when you get those requests and you're trying to create a report on the requests you've received, that you're able to show in, for example, a spreadsheet column, exactly what information is filled out for each one of those requests.
All right, awesome. And just so everyone's aware too, there's a setting in Monolith settings for Relay settings, and there's a tab for custom field options. So that's where you can kind of toggle which evidence fields are important for you to have on your Relay form. Does anybody else have questions? I don't see anything yet in the chat or the Q&A box. If you'd like to come on and ask a question over the microphone too, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you permissions to turn your mic on and do that.
Going
Okay.
once, going twice.
And sold. Well, if you guys have any questions for us after us, you can always reach the Monolith team at support@monolith.com, marketing at monolithforensics.com, and we'll get you the answers to whatever you need. Thank you, Maher, for showing us how this feature works today. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll hope to see you next week at the next one. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. It's been my pleasure.